The screens in the Earth Command Center showed nothing but red warnings and blinking casualty numbers. Colonel Nathan Hayes stood in front of the main display, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the edge of the control panel so hard that his knuckles had turned white. Around him, officers moved like ghosts, processing data that made no sense to the human mind. 10 billion people. Gone. The numbers kept changing. Sometimes they went up. Sometimes they stayed the same. But they never went down. 10 billion was a number too large to understand. It was not a number. It was a weight that crushed the breath from your lungs. "Sir," said Captain David Lopez from his station. His voice was hollow. "The reports from North America are still coming in. The casualty count for Canada alone is now confirmed at 800 million. Nathan did not turn around. He did not think he could move if he tried. His mind kept stopping at the same place, like a broken recording. One moment the Earth was whole. The next moment, 3 continents were gone. Burned away. Erased. The Galactic Empire had decided to make a show of force, and Earth had been the canvas for their demonstration. The attack had lasted 4 hours. 4 hours from the moment the Empire's ships appeared in the sky to the moment they left, satisfied that the lesson had been taught. The humans on Earth had no defense against technology that could reach into the atmosphere and burn entire cities from orbit. The few weapons Earth had managed to develop in secret could not reach the ships. The missiles simply vanished into electronic noise before they ever got close. Vice Admiral Lisa Grant walked into the room. She had not slept in 38 hours. Her eyes were red, and her uniform hung loose on her frame. She looked at the casualty numbers and then looked away, as if she could not bear to see them any longer. "The International Council is asking what we tell the people," she said quietly. "Some leaders want to surrender. They think if we give the Empire what they want, there will be no more attacks." Nathan finally turned to face her. "What do they want?" "Everything we have of value. Mineral rights to the entire planet. They call us a colonial territory now. They say we are their property." One of the other officers, a young woman named Catherine Price, made a sound like she was choking. She turned away from her console and put her head in her hands. Lisa sat down heavily in the command chair next to Nathan. "My daughter was in Singapore," she said. "She was supposed to call me Tuesday night. I am still waiting for that call." Nathan said nothing. What was there to say? His own family was in the bunker below them, safe in the underground city that had been built in secret for exactly this kind of emergency. But there were 10 billion people on Earth who did not have access to underground bunkers. There were 10 billion people who had simply disappeared when the Empire had decided to make a point. The doors to the command center slammed open. General Marcus Powell strode in, his face dark with rage. He was still in his flight suit, still covered with the dust and ash of the destroyed military base he'd been stationed at. He had been in the air when the attack came. He had watched his friends die from cockpit view. "We need to send everything we have left into space," Marcus said without preamble. "Every weapon, every ship, every explosive. We hit them back before they come again." "They will crush us," Lisa said flatly. "We cannot hurt them, Marcus. We do not have the technology." "Then we die," Marcus said. "But we die fighting." Nathan closed his eyes. He thought about the children in the bunker below. He thought about the teachers who were trying to keep them calm. He thought about the lies he had told them, saying that help was coming, saying that the adults would fix this, saying that everything would be all right. The lie stuck in his throat. "No," Nathan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "No?" Marcus said. "No what?" "No. We do not fight them with weapons they are prepared for. No. We do not surrender to people who would kill 10 billion humans like it means nothing. No. We do not send our remaining soldiers into space to be crushed by an enemy that can burn cities from orbit. Nathan looked at the casualty numbers again. The red glow reflected in his eyes. "We do something else," he said. "We use the one thing the Empire does not expect us to have." "What is that?" Lisa asked. "The ability to think like humans," Nathan said. "The ability to innovate. The ability to find the weak point and exploit it. The Empire has power. But power is not everything." Marcus leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting," Nathan said slowly, "that we stop thinking like a people trying to fight a war we cannot win. I am suggesting we start thinking like humans under an existential threat. And I am suggesting we call Dr. Patricia Wu." Lisa stood up. "The AI researcher. The one the government has kept isolated for security reasons." "The same one," Nathan said. "The one who wrote the papers on networked system vulnerabilities that the Joint Chiefs said were too theoretical to matter." "She is not military," Marcus said. "No," Nathan agreed. "She is not. But she is smarter than anyone in this room. And she understands that the greatest vulnerability of any advanced system is the system itself." Nathan walked to the communication console and picked up the secure phone. His hand shook as he dialed. Around him, the screens continued to flash with red warnings and casualty numbers. 10 billion people were gone. The Earth had been broken. But Nathan Hayes had just made a decision that would change everything. He did not know it yet. He could not know that within weeks, the Galactic Empire would be reeling from an attack they never saw coming. He could not know that the very technology they used to destroy 10 billion humans would become their weakness. He only knew that humans did not give up, that humans did not surrender, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was a person with nothing left to lose and a mind that refused to accept defeat. The phone rang through. Someone answered. Nathan took a breath and began to speak. Dr. Patricia Wu did not like being removed from her position at the National Science Foundation. She had been working on theoretical problems about networked systems for 17 years, and 17 years ago, the government had decided her research was important enough to fund, but not important enough to tell anyone about. She had been isolated in a secure facility in the mountains of Colorado, where the only visitors were military liaisons, who asked her questions and then told her that her answers were not practical. Now, sitting in the back of an armored vehicle that was speeding through a tunnel underground, Patricia realized why they had kept her isolated. They had been preparing for this. The underground facility where she was taken did not exist on any public map. It sprawled beneath the mountains like a metal city. People moved through corridors with purpose. Soldiers with weapons stood at checkpoints. And in the deepest part, in a secure room surrounded by walls of reinforced concrete and steel, Colonel Nathan Hayes was waiting for her. Patricia had seen pictures of Hayes. Everyone had. He was the new face of Earth's defense, the man who was supposed to be coordinating humanity's response to the Galactic Empire. But in person, he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in the past week. "Dr. Wu," he said, standing to greet her. "Thank you for coming." "I did not have a choice," Patricia said. She was not trying to be rude. She was simply stating a fact. Military men in armor had arrived at her isolated facility and told her to come. There had been no option involved. "Fair enough," Nathan said. "I will be direct. The Empire attacks us with technology we cannot match. Brute force will not work. I need you to tell me how to break them." Patricia looked at the man. She had been thinking about networked systems for so long that she could see them even when they were not in front of her. Every organism was a network. Every civilization was a network. And every network, no matter how advanced, had vulnerabilities if you knew how to look. "Show me their communication systems," she said. It took 3 hours for the military technicians to gather the data. They showed her recordings of Empire signals. They showed her images of Empire ships taken from far away. They showed her everything they had collected about the invaders in the few days since the attack. Patricia sat in front of a bank of screens and stared at the data. The other people in the room waited. They were soldiers. They understood how to wait. Then Patricia leaned back and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had found exactly what she was looking for. They are running on unified command structure, she said. One central authority controls all military operations across their fleet. Every ship receives orders from a central command hub. Every weapon system is networked together. Every decision flows through one system. Is that a weakness? Nathan asked. It is not just a weakness, Patricia said. It is a catastrophic vulnerability. She stood up and walked to the screens, pointing at the data with her finger. Think of it like this. Your body has a brain that controls everything. A single strong attack on your brain kills you instantly. The Empire has chosen to operate on the same principle. They are so advanced, so confident in their technology, that they never imagined anyone could strike at their brain. Nathan understood immediately. Can we hit that brain? We would need access to their network, Patricia said. We would need to infiltrate their systems undetected. We would need to plant code that would corrupt their command structure without triggering their security protocols. We would need to do it from within their own network, using their own infrastructure. How long would that take? Nathan asked. Patricia looked at the casualty reports on the wall. 10 billion people. She thought about her own family, about the students she had taught years ago before she was isolated, about everyone she had ever known who had been affected by the Empire's attack. If I had the right team, she said, it could be done in 4 weeks. Nathan nodded. You have it. Over the next 3 days, Patricia began selecting people. She needed a programmer who could think in ways that traditional training did not teach. She found Kevin Martinez, a genius who had been working for a tech company before the attack. He had lost his entire family to the Empire's bombardment, and he volunteered immediately. She needed an astrophysicist who could calculate the jump points between Empire space and human space. She found Dr. Rayesh Patel, who had been teaching at a university before everything changed. His hand shook when she explained what they were attempting, but he said he would do it. She needed a communication specialist who could coordinate with Earth's military forces while they executed a mission that no one in the history of humanity had ever attempted. She found Emma Torres, a woman who had been in the military for 15 years and who had a mind for logistics that Patricia had rarely encountered. Finally, she needed a pilot. Not a traditional military pilot, but someone who understood that conventional thinking would not save them. She found Colonel Sarah Mitchell, a woman who had been flying experimental aircraft for the military before the attack. Sarah had lost colleagues when the Empire bombed the test facility. She was angry in a way that Patricia recognized. It was the anger of someone who had been pushed to the edge and had decided that edge was the only place she could afford to be. Within a week, they had a team. Within 2 weeks, they had access to the smuggled Empire technology that had been recovered before the last data connection was destroyed. And within 3 weeks, Kevin Martinez wrote the first successful probe code. Patricia stood behind Kevin as he typed. The lines of code flowed from his fingers like music. It was beautiful and deadly at the same time. Is it ready? She asked. Kevin did not look away from his screen. His eyes were hollow. He had not slept in 36 hours. None of them had. But he was smiling. It is ready, he said. Patricia looked at the team around her. They were all broken in some way. All grieving. All angry. But they were also brilliant, and they had understood what she was trying to do. The Empire had come to Earth, expecting to crush a species that was primitive and easy to control. They had come expecting gratitude when they allowed humans to survive as colonial subjects. They had not expected humans to fight back. They had not expected that humans would find a way to strike at the heart of their power. They had not expected the one thing that humans had, always possessed in abundance: the ability to innovate in the face of impossible odds. Patricia entered the command that launched the first probe toward Empire space. On the screens around her, data began to flow. The probe was in. They were inside the network dot, and no one on the other side even knew they were there. The real war was about to begin. The first infection took place at 0300 hours. Kevin Martinez watched the data flow across his screen as the probe began replicating through the Empire's outer communication nodes. It was like watching a virus spread through a body. Except this virus had been designed by humans, and it carried a payload that would change the course of galactic history. "First node compromised," Kevin said. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly as they moved across the keyboard. Moving to secondary distribution. Around the underground facility, the team was distributed across different secure stations. Patricia Wu sat in the central command room, watching the data stream from 12 different monitors. Dr. Rayesh Patel was on a separate level, monitoring the astronomical data that would tell them how the Empire's ships were responding to the network degradation. Emma Torres was coordinating with military installations across the globe, ready to execute the kinetic phase of Operation Annihilation the moment Patricia gave the signal. Colonel Sarah Mitchell was in orbit, in a ship so small and so carefully shielded that it was nearly invisible to Empire sensors. She was waiting for the right moment to strike, the moment when the Empire's defenses would be blind. "Second node compromised," Kevin continued. "The code is spreading faster than predicted. They have not detected it yet. Their security protocols are looking for external threats. They are not prepared for infection from within their own network." Patricia leaned forward. This was the critical moment. If the Empire detected the probe now, they would seal off their network and the entire operation would fail. Then they would come back. And next time, they would be more careful. Next time, there would be no mercy. But the Empire did not seal off their network. The Empire, in their vast arrogance, did not believe anything within their own systems could be a threat. "Third node," Kevin said. "Fourth node. Fifth. The spread is exponential now." Patricia watched the network map on her screen. Red symbols began to bloom across the digital representation of the Empire's command structure. Each symbol represented a compromised node. Each node was spreading the infection to adjacent systems. The virus was replicating faster now, reaching deeper into the infrastructure that controlled the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "They are beginning to notice," Dr. Patel reported from his station. "I am seeing unusual communications between their forward position and the central command hub. Their ships are requesting clarification on orders they claim they never received." This was the moment where it could all fall apart. If the Empire realized what was happening now, if they managed to isolate the infection, then humanity's one advantage would be gone. Nathan had told Patricia this clearly when he first recruited her. They would have one chance. Only one. Kevin continued typing. His fingers flew across the keyboard with a precision that was almost hypnotic. He was not thinking about the keys anymore. He was thinking in code, speaking the language of machines, and the machines were listening. "Sixth node," Kevin said. "Seventh. Eighth. The core processor is coming online. I am creating a backdoor now. This will give us access to their central command database without triggering any security alerts." "How long?" Patricia asked. 2 minutes, Kevin said. Patricia stood up and walked to the window. The underground facility had no windows to the outside. This window looked down into a lower level where technicians were running calculations. Below them, deeper still, were the chambers where the younger generation of humans sat in shelters, told that adults were working on a solution. 10 billion people were dead. That was the weight that pressed on Patricia every second. That was the thing that made her fingers shake when she was not actively thinking about the next step. That was the thing that made her want to scream and cry, and rage against the unfairness of a universe that would allow an advanced civilization to destroy billions of innocents without consequence. But she did not scream. She did not cry. Instead, she thought about networks. "Back door is open," Kevin said. His voice had changed. It was quieter now, more dangerous. "I am inside their command database. I can see their operational orders. I can see their ship positions. I can see their strategic plans. What does it tell us?" Patricia asked. "It tells us that they plan to return to Earth in 3 weeks to begin resource extraction," Kevin said. "It tells us that they consider us unimportant. It tells us that they have other military operations happening across their territory that are consuming their attention. And it tells us that their central command hub is located on a station called Nexus Prime, which is currently in orbit around a planet that used to belong to a species called the Crow." Patricia nodded. This was what she needed to know. The Empire had vulnerabilities. All systems had vulnerabilities. The trick was finding the right pressure point and applying force in exactly the right way. "Begin Phase 2, Patricia said. Kevin's expression hardened. His fingers resumed their dance across the keyboard. This time, he was not just infecting their systems. This time, he was corrupting them. The virus began to spread through the Empire's strategic database. It started subtle. A single decimal point shifted in a weapon system calculation. A coordinate changed by a fraction of a degree. A supply report underreported current inventory by a small percentage. Nothing that would trigger alarms. Nothing that would be immediately obvious. But across the entire Empire's military structure, across hundreds of ships and thousands of installations, small errors began to accumulate. "Phase 2 is spreading," Kevin reported. "Current infection level at 67% of their networked systems. They are starting to notice equipment malfunctions, but they cannot determine the cause. Their diagnostic systems are also infected." What the Empire was experiencing was not an invasion. It was something worse. It was a slow dissolution of their own infrastructure. It was their own tools turning against them. The reports began coming in from the military, installations across Earth. Ships that had been monitoring Empire positions were detecting something unprecedented. Empire vessels were moving erratically. Communication between their ships was becoming confused and contradictory. Coordination between different command centers was breaking down. "Their command structure is fracturing," Dr. Patel reported. His voice carried a note of awe. "Different sectors of their military are starting to operate independently. They are issuing conflicting orders to the same ships." In the command center where Colonel Nathan Hayes was monitoring the operation, the weight that had been crushing his chest began to ease slightly. It was not victory yet, but it was something. It was proof that the impossible was not as impossible as everyone had believed. "Colonel Mitchell is requesting permission to begin kinetic operations," Emma Torres reported. "She says her sensors are showing Empire defensive posture is deteriorating." Patricia closed her eyes for a moment. This was the point where humans stopped using invisible weapons and started using the kind that left marks. This was the point where the operation transformed from cyber warfare to actual war. "Authorize it," Patricia said, in orbit. Colonel Sarah Mitchell received the signal. She looked at her weapons officer and nodded. The Empire had killed 10 billion humans. Now it was time to make them understand what they had done. The network was falling, and on the heels of its collapse, humanity was rising. Colonel Sarah Mitchell gripped the control stick of her fighter. Her call sign was Reaper. given to her by pilots who had seen her work. She had earned that name the hard way, through years of precision flying and impossible maneuvers. But today, she was going to earn a different name. Today, she was going to be the instrument of humanity's vengeance. The small human fleet hung in the darkness of space, like a handful of seeds scattered on black soil. 12 fighters, 3 cargo ships, 1 experimental cruiser that had been designed in secret during the final days before the Empire attacked. It was not much. Against the might of the Galactic Empire, it should have been insignificant, but the Empire was blind. That blindness was Sarah's advantage. All units, maintain attack pattern Delta, Sarah said into the communication channel. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had flown 1,000 simulations and knew exactly what needed to be done. We are hitting the supply depot first. No engagement with combat vessels. We go in fast, we hit our targets, and we get out. The Empire had made a critical mistake when they built their civilization. They had built it on the assumption that the most advanced technology would always win. And by most measures, they were right. But in their arrogance, they had concentrated all their resources in the wrong places. Their warships were massive and powerful, but they required supplies. Their weapons were advanced and lethal, but they needed to be maintained. Their command structure was centralized and efficient, but it was also fragile. The human fleet raced toward the first target. It was a supply station, a logistics hub that fed everything the Empire needed to wage war. The Empire had assumed it was safe. The Empire had assumed that a civilization that had been attacked days ago would be too broken, too disorganized to pose any real threat. The Empire was wrong. Sarah fired the first missile. It streaked through space, guided by calculations that Dr. Patel had made to the exact decimal point. The missile struck the supply station's fuel depot. The explosion was vast and terrible. Millions of tons of refined hydrogen propellant detonated in a cascade of energy that lit up the darkness like a second sun. Target 1 destroyed, Sarah said. Moving to Target 2. Behind her, the other human fighters were executing their own attacks. They were not trying to match the Empire's power. They were trying to be surgical. Each target was selected with care. Each strike was designed to reduce the Empire's ability to wage war, not to defeat them in direct combat. A cargo ship carrying replacement parts for weapons, systems, gone. A repair facility capable of fixing the damage to their ships, targeted and destroyed. A communication relay that had been partially corrupted by Kevin's virus, eliminated before it could be repaired. The Empire's response was slow. Their ships were trying to coordinate, but their command structure was too fragmented, too confused. By the time they realized they were under attack, Sarah and her fighters were already moving to the next target. In the underground command center, Patricia Wu watched the feeds from the orbital cameras. Sarah's voice came through the communication channel, calm and professional. Target 4 destroyed. Moving to Target 5. No casualties among our forces so far. Patricia felt something that might have been hope. For the first time since the Empire's initial attack, humanity was on the offensive. For the first time, humans were making decisions that shaped the outcome of the war instead of simply reacting to the Empire's decisions. But Sarah was already thinking beyond the immediate victory. She was thinking about what came next. Patricia, I have visual on a capital ship, Sarah reported. It is limping away from the battle zone. I can have it destroyed in 5 minutes. Patricia looked at the tactical display. The ship Sarah was tracking was an Empire destroyer, the kind of vessel that had participated in the bombardment of Earth, the ship that had burned cities, the ship that had killed billions. Do it, Patricia said. Wait, Sarah said. Her voice had changed. It was hesitant now, uncertain. I have them on sensor. They are launching escape pods. Crew members are evacuating. Patricia closed her eyes. She had known this moment was coming. She had known that at some point, humans would have the power to kill, and the question would be whether they would. Send them a warning, Patricia said quietly. Tell them they have 60 seconds to evacuate. Patricia, if we give them time to escape, we lose the tactical advantage, Emma Torres said from her station. We should destroy the ship while we can. No, Patricia said. She was thinking about 10 billion people. She was thinking about the children in the shelters below the facility. She was thinking about what kind of species humanity would become if they chose cruelty as their victory. Send the warning. Patricia repeated. Sarah transmitted the message. 60 seconds to evacuate. 60 seconds to get your crew away from your ship or die with it. The escape pods launched immediately. Sarah watched them separate from the capital ship and burn away towards safe space. She waited for the count to reach 0. Then she fired. The missile struck the uncrewed destroyer at the exact moment the last escape pod cleared the blast radius. The ship came apart in a bright cloud of fire and metal. It was destroyed. It would never harm anyone again, but the crew survived. Humanity had chosen not to kill them. Word of that choice spread through the Empire faster than any virus. The aliens who served on other ships, who were watching their civilization crumble under attacks they could not predict or stop, began to question their loyalty. The humans had just demonstrated something the Empire's leaders had never understood. Strength could coexist with mercy. Over the next 2 weeks, the human fleet continued its campaign. They struck at logistics. They destroyed supply lines. They targeted infrastructure. They did not engage in pitched battles with superior forces. Instead, they fought like humans, smart, adaptable, and absolutely relentless. The Empire's military structure began to collapse, not from direct assault, but from the slow erosion of their ability to maintain their civilization. Ships could not be repaired. Weapons could not be maintained. Orders could not be properly communicated. The central authority that had held their civilization together was fragmenting into competing interests. In the underground command center, Colonel Nathan Hayes watched the reports come in. The Empire was still far more powerful than humanity, but they were no longer invincible. They were no longer the inevitable victors. They were, for the first time in their long history, facing an enemy that could hurt them. And Sarah Mitchell, in her small fighter, understood that the most important victory had already been achieved. Humans were still human. They had the power to kill, but they had chosen mercy instead. That was not weakness. That was strength of a kind the Empire had never known. That was why they would lose. The diplomat station hung in the neutral zone between Earth space and Empire space. It had been hastily constructed in the weeks following the collapse of the Empire's military structure. Now, Vice Admiral Lisa Grant stood in the central chamber, looking across a long table at the representatives of the Galactic Empire. They were not what Lisa had expected. She had imagined fierce warriors, creatures of pure aggression and malice. Instead, she found herself looking at beings who seemed tired and confused. Their civilization was in ruins. Their ships were scattered. Their central authority had dissolved into competing factions, each claiming legitimacy over the others. The Empire had not lost because they lacked courage. They had lost because they had built a system so perfect, so efficient, that it could not adapt when that system was destroyed. Humanity had won because they were used to adapting. "We propose," Lisa said, speaking into the translation device that had taken her people 3 weeks to develop, "that the Galactic Empire dissolve as a single entity. We propose that each species within your federation be given the right to determine its own future. We propose a new order, one where strength is measured not in military power, but in the ability to coexist peacefully." The alien representative across from her made a sound that might have been laughter or pain. Lisa did not know which. "You would offer us mercy?" the alien said. Its voice was difficult to understand, filtered through computers that had to translate more than just words. They had to translate entire ways of thinking. "I would offer you survival," Lisa said simply. "The alternative is extinction." That was the simple truth. The Empire could continue to fight. Their forces were still formidable, but they were no longer the dominant power. Humanity had proven that. And if the Empire forced humanity to continue the war, there would be nothing left of their civilization except ashes. Liza thought about the 10 billion dead. She thought about her daughter, who would never call her again. She thought about the weight of humanity's loss. Then she said, "But I am not here to negotiate out of mercy. I am here to negotiate because humanity understands something your empire never learned. Survival is not about being the strongest. Survival is about building something worth surviving for." The diplomatic process took 3 months. There were multiple factions within the empire, and each one had to be convinced that surrender was better than continued resistance. Some came to the negotiating table quickly. Others needed to be shown the futility of continued resistance. Sarah Mitchell's fighter fleet helped with that demonstration. Back on Earth, Kevin Martinez had finally left his computer console. His eyes were red from staring at screens, and his back hurt from sitting in the same position for months. But his hands no longer shook. He had done what needed to be done. The Empire's network was gone. It could be rebuilt, but it would never be the same. It would never have the centralized control that had made it so efficient and so fragile. Kevin walked through the streets of Sydney with his brother, who had survived the initial bombardment by being in a shelter when the Empire's weapons fell. They did not talk much. They did not need to. The presence of another survivor was enough. Dr. Rayesh Patel was teaching again. His university had reopened, and he was training a new generation of astrophysicists. But now they were not just learning the theory of jump space. They were learning how to defend against threats they had never imagined existed. Emma Torres was promoted to general. She was now coordinating Earth's military forces in their new role as members of the galactic community. It was exhausting work, but it was work that mattered. Colonel Sarah Mitchell was different. She had killed more Empire soldiers than anyone else in the human military. She had also chosen mercy when she could have chosen annihilation. That choice had defined her. Now, when she looked in the mirror, she did not see a killer. She saw a soldier who had fought to survive and had maintained her humanity in the process. Patricia Wu was offered a position as Earth's chief science advisor. She accepted, but she also insisted on one condition. The young people who had served with her during the operation, the ones who had been cut off from their families and their normal lives for the sake of the mission, needed to be honored. They needed to have their sacrifice recognized. A memorial was constructed in the central plaza of Sydney. 10 billion names, or at least an attempt to list as many as could be recorded. People came to it every day, some to grieve, some to remember, some to understand that they had survived something terrible. 3 months after the first diplomatic meeting, a treaty was signed. The Galactic Empire, as a unified entity, ceased to exist. In its place, a coalition of independent species was formed, with representatives from dozens of worlds. Earth had a seat at that table. Humanity was no longer isolated. They were no longer prey, but the cost was never forgotten. Nathan Hayes attended the signing ceremony, but he looked smaller than he had before the war. He had aged in ways that time could not measure. He had held the weight of 10 billion deaths in his mind, and that weight had changed him forever. "We won," Lisa said to him as they stood watching the representatives sign the document. "We survived," Nathan corrected. "That is not the same as winning." Lisa wanted to argue with him, but she knew he was right. The enemy had been defeated, but the 10 billion were still dead. No treaty could change that. No victory could make that loss acceptable. Doc Kevin walked through the underground facility for the last time. His work was done. The AI systems that had been built to support the initial cyber attack were being dismantled and repurposed. Some of them would be used to help rebuild the areas of Earth that had been destroyed. Some of them would be used to coordinate with other species. Some of them would just be forgotten. As he walked, he thought about his family. He thought about their names and their faces and the sound of his mother's laugh. Those things were gone. They could not be recovered or restored. But they had mattered. Every moment of his life with them had mattered. And if his grief, if his rage, if his willingness to work himself to exhaustion had meant that no other family had to experience that loss, then maybe that loss had meaning. The memorial in Sydney grew larger as time passed. More names were added. More people came to remember. A child born 3 years after the war was named Survivor. A girl born to a woman who had watched the bombardment from a shelter was named Hope. These were not the names of the lost. These were the names of the future. Humanity had been tested in the worst way possible. They had been decimated. They had been told that they could not win. They had been crushed under the heel of a civilization that did not care about their suffering. And they had survived. Not just survived, but persevered. They had innovated. They had adapted. They had found their way to victory not through superior force, but through superior thinking and the refusal to accept defeat. The galactic community had never encountered a species quite like humans. They were not the strongest. They were not the most advanced. But they had something that was harder to quantify and harder to defeat. They had the ability to stand up after being knocked down. They had the ability to look at impossible odds and find a way forward. Most importantly, they had the ability to maintain their humanity even in the darkest circumstances. Even when they had the power to commit genocide, they chose mercy. That was what the Empire had never understood. That was what had made their defeat inevitable. Patricia. Wu looked at the memorial one last time before boarding the shuttle that would take her to the orbital station where she would coordinate humanity's new role in the galactic community. She thought about the 10 billion people whose names were carved there. She made herself a promise. Everything she did from this moment forward would be in service of making sure that no species, no civilization, ever experienced what Earth had experienced. She would work to build something better. Something where strength did not mean cruelty. Something where advanced technology did not mean advanced indifference to suffering. The shuttle lifted away from Earth. Patricia watched the planet recede below her. For so long, humanity had been alone. Now they were joining something larger. The path forward was uncertain, and the scars from the war would take generations to heal. But humans were good at healing, and they were very, very good at remembering what they had learned.